What is going on, Brooklyn Net fans? Hello, everyone. Welcome back here into another edition of the Brooklyn Boys Show. I am your host, Connor Long, coming to you guys about 6 days out from the start of the 2026 NBA draft. A lot to talk about still, a lot of prospects left to break down for the Brooklyn Nets, who own 3 picks, most notably number 6 overall, then number 33 and 43. And joining me today here to talk all things Nets draft, one of the best in the business. You know him from No Ceilings, the great Tyler Rucker, kind enough to give us some of his time right here on the program. Tyler, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Connor, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be on and talk some Brooklyn Net basketball. It's an exciting time. I told you before we record, I'm sort of invested in the Nets now. Like I'm trying to kind of see what the direction's going to be, but it's going to be an exciting time for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And number 6 overall is so interesting because there have been a flurry of names linked to the Nets. I think most notably is that tier of guards of Darius Acuff, Kingston Flemings, Keaton Wagler, Michael Brown Jr. We've heard the Nate Ament buzz pick up these past few weeks. But one name who is a guard and is going to be a first-round pick, but is seemingly out of the Flemings, Acuff, Brown conversation is Brayden Burries. And he's really intriguing. And I'm going to be honest, compared to those guys, I don't know a lot about him. That's why I'm excited for this conversation and to break him down, Tyler. Just kind of a quick overview on Burries based on the work that you've done, and why isn't he included in those conversations alongside Flemings, Acuff, and Brown Jr.?
Yeah, I think it's a fun class because of all these point guards, and then all of a sudden you kind of, I think, by natural effect, you think of all these guys as like, oh, the lead floor generals, with like the ones you said, Michael Brown, Acuff, even Wagler, but you kind of forget about Burry sometimes, and it's not because of lack of talent. It's just more because of he's a combo guard right now. And look, he was a point guard before this year. You see some background stuff on him. Like he went to Arizona, like his family wanted him to go to Arizona to play alongside someone, so he didn't have to be like the primary guy as a young player. And I think that was brilliant because it kind of showcased his ability. Like he got to develop off the ball, which I think is huge for your early career as an NBA guard. So like people kind of this year have been a little bit like, well, he didn't have too much of a usage. Arizona didn't lean on him too much, but it's like, well, he also developed and learned how to play off the ball and did it effectively. So I think Burries that's one of my guys. I love Burries. I think he's tough. He's one of those guys. I think if you're a team like the Nets, a lot of teams like this, you kind of need that piece to really start taking some steps forward. Of course you want to, swing for the fences for the upside guys, but I feel like you need the feel, you need the foundation of guys to really like build around. Burries, I feel like, is a fantastic piece of the puzzle. He's going to be a two-way guy. He's going to do the dirty work. He's going to be a guy on nights that takes over the game, and not just with scoring, but kind of he knows how to impact the game without just putting the ball in the basket. So I think Burries is one of those guys that is getting mentioned right now with a lot of those guys now. He's heating up because I think the playoffs too are really important for, a lot of these teams that are like, hey, who from this draft class actually we could see in the playoffs. Burries has been one of those guys.
Yeah, certainly. And watched a few games of his, and the notes that I kind of came away with: very high motor, a good on-ball defender as well, along with his ability to play off. And 6'4", 205, about to turn 21, so a little older for a freshman, especially compared to these 19-year-olds we're going to see go in the guard category. So you have him up there, Tyler, with Kingston, with Darius, with Michael Brown Jr. Where does he rank on your board currently alongside those other guards?
I have him at 6 on my board. He's been
overall or
overall.
Guard? Oh, okay, wow.
Like he's been. So I'm an Arizona Wildcats fan, so everyone will hear this and be like, oh, you're biased. No, I actually, like, in a weird way, I grade them harder because I'm watching them all the time.
Yeah.
And Burries, at the end of the year, I got caught up in all of his film, and I was just like, man, this guy looks like he could be such a valuable piece. And I thought there was more on-ball playmaking than you realize. The flashes were really brilliant. I know that it wasn't the highest usage, but, like, he learned how to play off the ball, like I just mentioned, and then the toughness. You saw the growth throughout the year. He had like one of the coldest opening 5 games of the year. If you throw that out, his stats the whole year were fantastic. He hit that 6th game and just took off, and it was consistent. I know everyone's, the last game of the year against Michigan, he had a bad game. So everyone has that bad taste in their mouth.
Yeah.
But if you watch the whole season, it was impressive how good he was consistently and how much he got better every, stretch of like 5 games. They played at BYU, and I thought he was the best player on the court. He had a game-winning block at the very end, when BYU was making a little run. But that's including AJ. So I think Burries is, like you said, he's a little older for a freshman. That's where it's like, oh, that's the buzzkill, if you want to put it that way with him. But he measured at the combine heavier than I thought. He was 215 at the combine, and I was like, uh-oh. And then he had like almost the 40-inch vert, and I was like, well, I guess he's okay there. But I got to see him a couple times in person. He is so stocky upper body, and it's not like bad weight. He's ripped. He's a tough dude.
Yeah, he's really interesting just to see where he's going to fall. You have him 6 on your big board, and I'm sure there's some people out there who have him, 20th. He's kind of one of those guys. It just depends on what you value. Some teams are going to want to go for the enticing upside and scoring ability that Acuff brings, or just the feel and IQ and two-way ability that Burries also possesses. So I think it really depends on what each team prioritizes in their guard of the future. And for the Nets, it's interesting, right? Like, I could see them calling Burries' name at number 6 overall if that's the case, and then the fan base absolutely rioting because he's not like the sexy pick, so to speak. He doesn't scream like, oh, the A cup for the Flemings who could average 28 points per game right away and be this crazy scorer and automatic from 3-point range. I think he's more of like this grit glue guy who kind of holds everything together. And that kind of brings me to my next point. If you look at what the Nets did in last year's draft, they took 5 guys. And 1 year after that, it doesn't really look all that promising. I think Yegor had a really solid year, but looking more like a wing than a true facilitator point guard. After that, Traore, Powell, Wolf, Sarah, flashes here and there, but nothing really sustainable over the course of an 82-game season. So that brings me to the next point. Do you think the Nets are better off taking a big swing on one of those top guards, or Ndate Ament, and hoping that he can come in and find his role right away, or settle for a Burries or someone of that nature? Not necessarily settle, but prioritize more the higher floor, the guy who's going to come in right away and contribute. What would be your preference at 6, Tyler, if you're Sean Marks?
It's a tough one because I know what the Nets did last year. I know how Nets fans are probably feeling like we took all these guards. You're really going to take a guard again. And my problem is like, if you don't, I think the position, like the depth when I come to like my tiers and everything with like my big board and stuff. Like, look, I know I'm a little bit higher on Burries. I'm fine with that. I just see the winning intangibles, the two-way upside. There's not a lot of good defensive guards in this class. I think Burries could be one of the better defensive guards. But when you look at all the tiers, like there's a lot of guards in my top 2 tiers, and it's more of, I stop myself and look kind of like, hey, this is ridiculous how many guards I have. Yeah. But then you look at the rest of the board and you're like, these are the best players. These are the best talents, I feel like. So if that's the case with the Nets, what I'm getting at is, do you really want to draft for need because of, what you did last year? I think the Nets roster last year was just like, you had to start from the ground up. And you really needed to just be like, just get guys that you feel maybe they're not superstars, but you feel they could be around for a long time and they could be impactful pieces. Maybe those are the pieces of the puzzle you're still waiting for the cornerstone, the building block to surround with. So this year I would go guard. I really would. I think if they stayed at 6, now I'm not reporting anything, but if you stayed at 6, I would just go with your board and trust who is the best player on your board, regardless of position. I get the intrigue to swing upside there. I think the upside swings there are a little dangerous. I just think there's a lot of question marks. And for a team like the Nets, the battle is, if you don't go that route and you want to say, hey, we have a vision from last year, we believe in it, then maybe you're just going another position and you're believing in like, hey, maybe Nate Ament, maybe a Diamara, another position where it's like, let's give this a real shot. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I am saying I can understand why the Nets might be like, we're tempted to go another position because we might as well give this a run. Like, this is what we believe in. We got to see it through. But I also think the Nets could be a sneaky team that looks smart and be like, we're going to move back a little bit, still get our guy and get a bunch of assets. it's going to be really interesting. I think talking around the league and asking everyone, no one knows what Brooklyn's up to.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
so that's the truth. Like, I know I've had so many Nets fans reach out to me like, is it really Nate Amen? Is it really Nate Amen? And I'm like, honestly, anything you hear this early is usually strategic. It's very rare that it is connected of like, that's their plan. You're like, wow, more than a week out, they're spilling it. I think they're exploring all options still.
Absolutely. And look, I think this is the time of year where they kind of get the scouts together and have this one final meeting where the scouts plead their best argument for who they want. And then Sean Marks is obviously the final one making the decision. I think a lot of what they do will depend on what the Clippers do at number 5 overall. And I think that's a situation that not enough people are talking about. I think the top 4, regardless of order, it's pretty much consensus in DeMonsta, Peterson, Boozer, and Wilson. After that, though, with the Clippers, keep in mind, after this aspiration, saga of sorts over there, they don't own another first-round pick until 2029. So there's also the possibility of them saying, hey, we might be looking for a new GM next offseason. Let's make this job more attractive, trade back a few spots, maybe acquire more capital, and then you kind of help aid that rough patch, really, of not having a first-round pick until 29, I believe it is. Or they could stick and pick and say, hey, we like Keaton Wagler, or we like Kingston Flemings, or we like Michael Brown Jr., and then whoever's maybe left after that, the Nets can then choose from. But the more and more you talk about Burries, the more and more I see the fit in Brooklyn, just because this is a team that needs to be physical. Like, I understand the roster that we saw these past 2 years is not going to be their team of the future because a lot of it just wasn't really NBA players. There were two-way guys playing 30 minutes a night the final 20 games of the year. It was ridiculous. But they need to get more physical. They need these guards who could drive with authority, have physicality, can play on the defensive end of the ball. So I think that's where Burries really, really comes into play. And what do you think his role right away looks like? We know what the ceiling is. We know what you hope he can contribute as, but what does that role look like for him right away in an NBA lineup?
Yeah, I think Burries is going to be a smart guy where he figures out like, hey, I got to lean on the defensive side of the ball early. I got to try to make an impact that way. And I think the shot looked better at the combine when I saw it than I was even, from seeing it throughout the year in person. I was like, wow, the shot even looks smoother now. Like, he gives me a lot of Derek White vibes. Now, he's not as long as Derek White was, but that's the way he plays the game, where it's like, okay, in transition, he gets downhill. He has that toughness to get into your body, but also the composure to slow down. I think he plays with great feel. Burries is just one of those guys that he kind of plays like a vet. He plays the game with really good poise and understanding of what's going on. And he is, if you're looking for a guy to get to the basket and be tough, he is fun in transition because he is just a pit bull. And it's not like out of control. It is just like he knows how to use his burst and his body to get into you, get you out of position. And then he just finishes. Like, he's a good... That's why I think he's the Derek White. He's good at finishing through contact and at the last second, like, giving that touch. And he's got a little sneaky bounce that you're not expecting on. Oh, wow. But I think Burries is just the guy that, like, it's funny when you hear fans passionately now about mock drafts will be like, that's too early. And I'm like, I don't know if any order with the guards this year is too early because one team behind them might love them. So it's kind of like in a perfect world, I'd be like, hey, if they love Burries, maybe they could trade back to 8, get another pick, and take Burries at 8 and whatever. But I don't know, because someone else might want to go get Burries and think this is a year. Draft your guy if it's close. But yeah, I think with the Nets, another good feel guy alongside the toughness you want to build alongside the pieces they have last year. I also think he's just a dog. He's a competitor. He's gonna be playing till the final whistle. And if it's a tough year for Nets fans, I'm sorry, but I think he's going to be
given to apologize.
We're rebuilding, so I get the process. But if it's post All-Star break, I think he's going to be giving you the same effort that he was given in the beginning of the year. I think that's where Burries has those winning intangibles that you want to build a culture with.
Now, does it concern you in any way that he's this type of guy who doesn't have anything that jumps off the chart. You're not like, oh, he's such a great 3-point shooter. You could point to the defense, but I think when you talk about these guards, the selling point nowadays is, oh, they could shoot the three ball really well, where they're such an elusive ball handler. With Fleming's, it's the elite speed and to get downhill quickly. Does it concern you in any way that he's maybe this guy who doesn't have anything that jumps off the chart, but he also has few weaknesses as well? So you could argue that he makes up for it in a way.
No, it's a great question, Connor. I think, I personally I think we always over fascinate with like the guys that are like, well, what's the elite skill? And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like I understand that, but what if I all of a sudden have a player with a lot of like really good to potential great skills, like a jack of all trades guy? I think he's just, I've seen games where the shot's not falling, and I thought he was one of the better players on the court, which speaks volumes to me when I can feel your impact without like the box score looking great. I'm like, wow, I didn't even notice he was having a rough night and he's been great. I look for guys that like could be superstars in their role, not just the like, oh, who could be an MVP in this draft class. I look for like who could be a star in their role. I think Burries could be that guy where like my version of a superstar is like you can dominate a game in 5 different ways, where it's like, okay, scoring, rebounding, defense, playmaking, just kind of your two-way impact. I've seen games where Burries just takes over without even putting the ball in the basket. So I think it's always tricky with what you're saying. Like, it's such a good question because that is a big part of evaluating, is kind of being like, well, what's the NBA skill? And with Burries, I think he's going to be, why I say he reminds me of Derek White is like, it's more maybe probably like San Antonio Spurs, Derek White, but it's like he knows when to take what you're giving him. And he doesn't force his shot too much. He will work to get somebody a better shot, or he'll be like, hey, it's early in the shot clock. Let's keep working, try to see if we can get someone better. It's not that he's passive. It's just that he's a high basketball IQ guy. So I think when you have high feel, when you offer two-way ability, when you offer the way to impact a lot of places, quickly waters down me being like, well, what is your elite skill? Because I'm like, he can just play. And that's kind of where I get to with Burries.
Yeah, very well said there. And you kind of referenced it earlier on in the show. His decision to go to Arizona, family played a role in, was so that he could have someone to lean on. I think largely throughout the year was Koa Pete, and just having that guy alongside him who he could play with and didn't necessarily have to be the number one option. Whoever the Nets take at number 6 overall, though, is going to have to come in and be a difference maker right away, take over center stage, most likely be that facilitator, ball handler in Burries' case, most likely more of a shooting guard who could play off the ball and play that wing role. Do you have any concerns of, hey, if he goes into the NBA with one of these teams in the top 10, he's going to have to take on a bigger role and be center stage? Does that concern you at all, given that he didn't have to be that guy last year at Arizona like some of these other guards?
I think a little bit. It's kind of a weird song and dance I do with this type of player, where I think NBA teams are really smart now, where if you could draft a combo guard, a guy that has shown like, hey, we think there's some on-ball juice at the NBA level. We also think like, hey, he knows how to play off the ball. It's almost like better, in my opinion, for their development, because early on you don't have to give them the ball and be like, figure it out. Which a lot of rookie guy, especially rookie like guards, the hardest position to transition to probably in sports, just because the speed is just turned up to supersonic. Yes. And you're not just balancing the NBA speed now, you're balancing the personalities that come with the whole NBA franchise. You're balancing a new playbook that's changing rapidly throughout the length of your season. There's so much that comes into that. So I think with like Burries, why I love him going to the Nets even would be like, well, you just took all these guards that just had this year. They can run the show. Burries could kind of be like, okay, let me figure it out. Let me still learn how to, I just played off the ball. This is what I do best now in my head because I just did it for a year. And I think he'll have more reps to be on ball. I'll tell you, like Brooklyn, I feel the best about any player going there because of the staff they have. I think they have one of the more underrated coaching staffs, and they play so hard. So that's why any player that goes to Brooklyn, I'd be like, heck yeah. I'm feeling good about Jordi being there. I'm feeling great about exactly what they got building. But it's a good place for a player like Burries or anyone they draft, because you get reps. They're going to play the guys.
Certainly.
They're going to let them learn, and you're going to build confidence, because you're going to be like, if you make a mistake, it's okay. You're going to make more mistakes. We're not going to pull you out of the game right away. We're going to learn together and grow together. So, I think he'd be fantastic there.